Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're building what I think is the best budget 1440p gaming system available in the market today. So before we do that, let's talk about some of these individual components and maybe why I chose the ones that I chose. And then we'll put it together and lastly we'll benchmark it and see what the performance looks like. So real quick, before we actually dive into building it, I just wanted to talk through some of the components and what my requirements are when I was building this system or putting this parts list together. So first of all, had to be new components. I buy a lot of used components, and I don't have any problem with that. I don't have a problem recommending that. But I did want to start off with a new system that anybody could go out and buy and not be so reliant on deals to make it, quote unquote budget. And speaking of budget, I didn't have a set budget when I was trying to build this. I just knew like what components I thought would work well together, and especially at a lower price point. Because everybody's hyper focused on certain graphics cards these days, but a lot of those graphics cards are like $500. So that's more than half of this budget. So I didn't have a budget, and budget can vary depending on person, from person to person. So I wanted to start at this price point. My goal was originally 750, and I think realistically you can probably get there with maybe a few modifications or buying things at the right time. But as you can see, as of right now, as the time of filming, 860, 660, which is humorous because when I was buying these components, it was 880. So the price can fluctuate a little bit, just to put that out there. And the other kind of requirement that I had was that I'm trying to stick to a budget, but also give people expandability and upgradability along with that budget. So I'll talk about that briefly, but the other thing too was, there's a lot of, and I probably mentioned this already, but there's a lot of flexibility in this budget, right? So, or in this build. And when I say that, I mean, if you were to buy used components, you could save some money, or if you decided to use a different power supply or a different motherboard or what have you, you can sub in and out a few components and maybe save 10, 20, $30 here or there. So really that does drive the price down, and ultimately I think you can probably get to that 750, 800 mark, and for the same quality of system. So real quick, you're looking at the parts list, you've already seen the parts. But just a quick, overview of some of the components. So from a platform perspective, AM5, without a doubt, is the system to buy right now. I went with Ryzen 5 9600X, and one thing I will say is that processor, 65 watt TDP, fantastic buy, but it is a little overpriced at like $185. I bought mine for $149, and you can regularly buy that when it goes on sale at that $159 mark. So, that's my one, fact about that item. The motherboard, ASRock B650M, HDV / M.2 micro ATX. So anyway, great buy at this price point. It has great VRMs, so it will handle higher end processors no problem. A lot of budget cheaper boards don't do that, but this one will. The other thing I want to say about this board is it doesn't have Wi-Fi built in, and that may be a deal breaker for some people. This board does have the ability, it does have a M.2 E-keyed slot, so you can add a Wi-Fi card in there. But you do have to buy it separately, and it's like another $20 on Amazon. So you could opt for a different board that has Wi-Fi built in for another $20 or $30. So that's totally a possibility as well. Unless you don't need Wi-Fi, then you don't have to worry about it. Memory, 32 gigs, DDR5 6000, lowest CAS latency you can find. I think this is a great price to performance ratio, $85 for some Patriot Viper, low CL30, but you can regularly buy 32 gigs, DDR5 6000, CL36 for sub $85, and that'll be perfectly fine. Storage, 1 TB. Pick your poison. NVMe, Gen 4 drive. I don't think it's really worth buying a Gen 5 drive for this system. You're talking $50 to $60 a terabyte. I like this drive. It's DRAM-less, but it's great performance. Team Group's been around for a long time too, so they're just reliable manufacturer. CPU cooler. There's a lot of flexibility in CPU coolers for a 65-watt TDP part, even all the way up to Thermaltake claims 220 watts. I wouldn't do that, but for this cooler, this processor, this cooler, this build, this single tower is ideal. Sub $20. You can get 8 RGB, no RGB. You can get black ones, you get silver ones, you get white ones. Whatever you want. Sub $20. That is a fantastic cooler. You don't have to go crazy with it, and that'll perfectly cool this system without an issue. Let's see what else. Case has a lot of flexibility. Since I went with a micro ATX board, I went with a micro ATX case. In this case, the reason I specifically chose this one is because it comes with fans. A lot of cases don't, and a lot of people forget to add that into their budget. So you're talking, sub $10 or $10 a fan, generally speaking. This case comes with 4 ARGB fans. They might not be the best fans, but they will last you years. And at $55, it's kind of hard to beat. I don't expect that case to be equivalent of a Lian Li or anything like that, but as long as it has sufficient airflow with those included fans, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. Power supply I struggled with. I went back and forth on this one many a times. I went the safe route. I went with something that's got a long warranty, something that's brand new, modular, supports ATX 3.1 and PCIe 5.1. So it has the 12 volt V6, X6 PWR connector, whatever they call that. It also is way overkill for this system. Intel recommends 600 watts. It's 750 watts. PC part pickers telling me it's going to use less than 400 watts. When I bench tested everything just to make sure it worked, we were drawing like 250 watts from the wall. 15 or 50, I don't remember, but it was sub 300 watts, in a benchmark, and sub 50 is overkill. But my thought process was, it's modular, it's got all the new standards, it'll last a very long time, it's got a 10-year warranty, and if you were to throw a higher end card in it, like a 70 series card, like a 5070, this would handle that. So you're not losing any performance. It is relatively expensive, and like I said, there is some flexibility in the price based on those components. That is one of those things you could swap out to a much lower end power supply. I think I was looking, like, you can get like the Thermaltake Tough Power White. I don't remember exactly what they call it. 600 watt. It's not modular. It doesn't support any of those new standards, but it's 600 watts. Relatively good reviews, and it's like $45. So really, if you wanted to save $40, you could go that route as well, and I'm sure it would be fine. But I just, I err on the side of caution sometimes when it comes to power supplies. And I say sometimes because I don't always do that, but in this case I did. And the last thing that I wanted to mention real quick is the graphics card. I know it's controversial. ARC B580. I think in 2025, 12 gigs of VRAM for $250 is just unheard of. Luckily, we're at the point in the year where supply has caught up to demand. Then you can buy this card today at $250, $260. This is the Intel variant. You can buy it at that price point. It's going to perform good. 12 gigs of VRAM is not going to cause any issues, especially at 1440p. And it should last you a few years. So those are the components. Let's go build it. From a build perspective, everything went together smoothly, except for the motherboard, because I knocked it off the desk and broke it, then promptly had to replace it. Outside of my own issues, everything went together really well. The case stole the show for me though. $55 with 4 ARGB fans and an RGB fan controller? That's practically unheard of. The metal is a bit on the thinner side and the fans don't push a ton of air, so there are some trade-offs, but it was by far the biggest surprise of the build. You'll also likely notice I used different memory than what was included in PC Part Picker. That's just what I had on hand, and as I mentioned earlier, any kit sub $85 that's DDR5 6000 and low chaos latency should be perfectly fine. Overall performance was fantastic for this price point. With a $250 video card, you're not going to get a super high FPS at 1440p, but I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of games in the 100 plus FPS range. Every game was tested using high settings in some sort of upscaler. XeSS in games that supported it, and FSR where XeSS was not supported. In Borderlands 4, I saw a solid 80 FPS in a game that has notoriously poor performance. Gameplay was super smooth and really pleasant to play on. Baldur's Gate 3 and Indiana Jones in the Great Circle was similar with a steady 110 to 115 FPS. The only game I really had an issue with was Dune Awakening. While I was seeing 100 to 115 FPS on average, I did notice some stuttering or rubber banding, which was distracting. It did seem to clear up over time, so might not have been entirely on the system itself. From a built-in benchmark perspective, I saw 120 FPS in Red Dead 2, 106 FPS in Black Myth Wukong, 78 FPS in Monster Hunter Wilds, and 76 FPS in Doom: The Dark Ages Hebeth. Ultimately, the system was really enjoyable to play on, and I would be happy with that system at this price point and resolution. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. I've learned a ton making this video and already identified some room for improvement. Like saying a million times in that one clip, I apologize for that, and hopefully I'll get that taken care of in the next video. So please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.